Okay, we're a little bit after 1 o'clock, so I guess we'll get started. And if other people are going to come in, they can catch up. So welcome back, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed your lunch. We're going to get started with our afternoon panel. Let me start by introducing myself. I know a lot of you out here, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Stevens. I'm a senior program administrator and the communications coordinator for the New York State Commission on National Community Service. I was born and raised upstate in Albany. I've been on the commission staff for a little over 8 years, and I've worked in public service for New York State for the past 12 years. I wanted to personally thank all of you for joining us today at this forum. Your input is really invaluable to those of us who are working to launch this initiative, so thank you. And I'm extremely grateful and humbled to be able to moderate this discussion. As we navigate the growing challenges of youth mental health, it's crucial to hear from people who are on the front lines, who are making a tangible difference in their communities. And this afternoon's panel, titled Practical Perspectives, brings together a diverse group of individuals who each play a vital role in supporting young people's mental well-being. We have with us Julie Hill, who is right next to me here, who has earned a youth peer advocate credential and who now leads other YPAs. So we're hoping that she can share her unique experiences and insights into the peer support landscape. We also have Jason Lloyd, who is next to Julie, who has a unique university perspective and can talk about some of the educational benefits that members of both the New York Youth Mental Health Corps and AmeriCorps generally can take advantage of. And we have two leaders from the Mental Health Association of Columbia Green um, in the Hudson Valley. That's Roxanne Carpenter and Eric Bell, who both have several years of experience managing an AmeriCorps program in New York State. So they can provide us with insider perspectives on running an AmeriCorps program, and they can illustrate the impact AmeriCorps has on their communities and their members. And they also work with individuals who have gone through the YPA credentialing, so can hopefully speak to that from the AmeriCorps perspective. So together we're going to hopefully explore some of the practical challenges, successes, and lessons learned with people who actively contribute to improving youth mental health. So let me get started with Julie first. Can you talk a little bit about your background and your sort of personal journey related to mental health? I know that I think it should be on, so you can just talk. And just kind of like your personal journey, and I know that you've had some challenges with mental health, and then maybe how that motivated you to want to pursue a youth peer advocate credential.
Yeah, so hello, everybody. My name is Julie. I am 27 years old. I first started experiencing mental health symptoms probably as young as when I was 6 years old, but we never sought any assessing or seeing somebody personally for me just because I always did really well in school and stuff like that. So we always considered it to be a family at the home problem. Um, so we just had family counseling, but it wasn't until I was 15 years old that I was finally diagnosed. I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and an eating disorder right all around the same time frame, not in the same day. But essentially what happened was I got slowly got so overwhelmed. I was a very high achieving student, constantly taking AP classes, honors classes, extracurricular activities, things outside of school. I was doing way above and beyond. And at some point I just kind of crashed from all of it and I stopped going to school altogether my sophomore year. um, but I didn't want to actually talk about what was going on because I kind of internalized this stigma that, well, you have to have something traumatic that happens to you in order for you to have a valid mental health diagnosis. And I didn't want to have that conversation with other people for them to question why I was depressed when, my parents are still together or that nothing happened to me or something like that. So I just kind of shut everybody out and I minimized everything that was going on and saying, well, it's not that big of a deal because at least I'm not doing this. And then that would happen. And then I would say, well, it's still not that bad because at least this isn't happening. And then that would happen. So it slowly escalated more and more. And my parents put in a lot of different services first to try and get me to go back to school, get me to recover in some aspect. But ultimately, I was hospitalized for about 4 months. I went to an alternative school. Um, I received multiple different kinds of medications, therapies, things like that. Um, Never anything such as peer support didn't really exist, or it was just beginning when I was getting services, but I kind of missed that frame. So I never really got to talk to someone who understood what it was like to be actively in the system, to know what it was like to be in the hospital, to know what it was like to not like be able to get out of bed for days at a time and things like that. Um, so I really miss that kind of perspective. Um, I was able to go back to school my senior year, but because I had missed so much school my sophomore year, all the credits that I had to make up and stuff during the hospital and things like that, um, my GPA was terrible. And I'm a very self-destructive person. So I dropped out of high school with 2 months left to graduation. I had to get my GED, which I did later in the year. But I was really flailing because I kind of thought, well, I destroyed my own future and there's nothing else I can do with my life because I messed it up so bad, and there's no recovery to this. Um, but my psychiatrist, she actually told me about AmeriCorps, and it was a different branch. It was through NCCC, which I later did. But I was actually deferred for a year. They didn't accept me initially just because I was still pretty actively struggling with my mental health. So in the meantime, while I waited the year period to apply again, I got a couple jobs, and then that's how I found the Mental Health Advocates of Western New York, whereas where I currently work as a youth peer advocate, where I was able to meet other people who knew exactly what it was like, but also I got to be that voice for people that the person that I needed when I was 15, 16, but for others. Um, and then later I decided, I still want to do AmeriCorps. I love doing the work as a YPA, but I want to still give back more. So I did my AmeriCorps service term in 2017, and then I came back to MHA afterwards. So I've essentially been working as a youth peer advocate. I think it's 8 years. It'll be next month. It'll be 8 years for me. So I essentially got the job. I was just turned 19 at the time. So I've kind of done a lot across the board. I was able to go back to school, um, initially through community college and then working my way up to, I graduated in 2022 with a bachelor's degree in social work with a GPA of 3.97. So something that I never, thank you. Something that never seemed achievable at all because well, I dropped out of high school. What else am I good for? I was still able to kind of make my way. And then so I was able to, work on myself, work with other youth. So I've kind of seen it all across the board. So that's just a little bit about me in a nutshell.
And thank you for coming all the way from Western New York.
Yeah, I'm from Buffalo.
First trip to the
They
city.
they have negative wind chills there right now, so I'm kind of glad for the weather here.
And I think it's a safe enough space where I can say go Bills, right? We can say that. Yeah. Everyone outside of Kansas City is a Bills fan this week. Um, okay, so thank you. That's great. I'll just turn it over to some of the other panelists. How about Jason? Can you just tell us a little bit about SUNY Empire, such as I'll put location in air quotes. All your mics should be on, by the way.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Should
Yeah,
be good to go. Maybe, it's like size, programs offered, just a
sure.
little bit.
Yeah.
basic.
So, and what a great segue into this. Thank you. So, Jason Lloyd, I work for SUNY Empire University. We are now a university, part of the SUNY system. And we're unique in that we are not a traditional campus. Our campus is online. So, more than 90% of our coursework is done through the online space. And we have touchdown spaces all over the state of New York, right? So Buffalo, I personally sit in Saratoga Springs, but even, we have Fort Park, which I think is behind me. We have a touchdown space there, Staten Island. So we're very located throughout the state still. And the college's mission back in 1971 was basically to meet students where they are. And that was through distance learning. So I can actually say we were doing asynchronous learning before there was asynchronous learning as we know it, through the mail and paper documents and what have you. But the idea was to elevate those working adults in all kinds of life experience. And then how can they take that good work and experience that they do and get some credit for it, right? College level credit for it. And so we started right out of the gate this idea of credit for prior learning. And why I'm here today is to talk to you about this YPA credential and how we have come to evaluate it and give it that credit where it's deserved. So there's two credentials. Melanie spoke of the YPA. We call it the YPA 1, sort of an internal thing, which is the entry-level basic credential. And we've evaluated that for 8 college credits. The YPA 2 has been evaluated, which is the professional certification, at 12 college credits. So if you think about this, and I was sitting there doing the math this morning with all the presentations, that basically works out to, if you take most of our students are Pell eligible, so you're going to get a $7,000 Pell grant. You're going to use your AmeriCorps benefit, which is $7,000 benefit. But if you bring in those 20 college credits at $295 a credit, which is what SUNY Empire is, that's over $15,000, which you've potentially, you're not having to come directly out of your own pocket for, right? So that's almost half of your degree right there. So we've partnered with AmeriCorps New York to even go a little above and beyond, where we've reduced that fee that students typically would pay from $750 to $300, I think it's $350 or $300. And so what that means is it's not just the YPA. So students work one-on-one with a faculty mentor in their area of study, and it doesn't need to be done right out of the gate, but as you're doing your degree, you're going to be pushed to things like, what other life experience have you done? And how confident are you in that level of mastery? Because if you can articulate that level of mastery, maybe through essay writing or another credential, for instance, if were an EMT like I was in a different life, that all equates to college credit. So you do this evaluation where you could potentially bring in up to 32 credits of prior learning towards a bachelor's degree, which is 64 credits at our university. All of our courses are 4 credits. So the idea is to, elevate you, but get you out into the real world with your degree quickly. We have a very, very fast graduation rate, because so many of our students are bringing in so much prior learning that, typically speaking, I think there's a statistic on the website. I think it's like 20 to 25 credits, like right away. You don't even know you have it, because the breadth of what is eligible is so much. So I think that's what sets SUNY Empire apart from our other institutions across the state. And then, of course, the ability to do this on the go. We have a very high enrollment from active military and veterans, because they're constantly going, being deployed or whatever, doing trainings. And so I know AmeriCorps, from what I understand, has a multitude of things that sort of mirrors that. You could be placed in different places, and you're thinking, well, I can't go to class on a regular basis, where you set your own schedule because it's online. So the college, or I should say the university, sort of comes to you when you need it. So that's a little bit about SUNY Empire and what I do, and I'm happy to be here.
Great, thank you. I'm going to turn to the folks from Mental Health Association of Columbia Green. You guys seem so far away down there. Could you maybe just talk about your experience with AmeriCorps? Like, what are some of the common challenges you face in leading an AmeriCorps program, how you navigate those, and maybe give a little description of your agency as well?
All right, I'll start real quick and then I'll pass it over to Eric. Eric and I've worked together for a little over 12 years with the AmeriCorps program, and he may know the number of members we've had over the years. When we were getting ready to talk about coming here, we started talking about the youth that we had, young people that went through being youth advocates before there was a YPA, and where they were now and what they were doing. So we did have some questions, but I'll let him start with a little bit of history and whatever about AmeriCorps.
Thank you. How's everybody? Good? I know we just had lunch. I know that I don't want to run into the lunch sleepy crowd. So we're doing well right now? Okay, so as she's mentioned, my name is Eric Bell. I have the opportunity of, so I currently work with the Mental Health Association of Columbia Greene County. I'm here representing as the director of the Hudson Promise Corps. Got to always big up my program. Sorry, little type of person I am. Between Roxanne and I, we have over 50 years of AmeriCorps experience. Wrap your head around that. Over 50 years of combined AmeriCorps experience. I started my AmeriCorps journey here in New York City, working with an organization that you probably heard of called the Harlem Children's Zone, where it was actually Reedland back then, and then I worked with a few other programs. Roxanne actually started in Oneonta, correct? And so what you see every day when I come to work is 50 years of diverse experiences, urban, rural, and we put our heads together and we try to come up with a core when we're talking about recruitment and best practices. And we try to always bring together a diverse group of young people that have urban experience, rural experiences, because we wholeheartedly believe everyone can serve. Everyone has a value. Everybody has something to contribute. So one of the things I was told to kind of talk about as best practices is I, you can't ask a guy and give a guy who's worked with AmeriCorps for 30 years to give you best practices. We would be here till tomorrow. Let me just put that there. But so I actually tried to earmark a couple. One of the best practices I've learned along my journey of working with AmeriCorps is let the experts be experts. The AmeriCorps experience is like no other. It's a very specific experience. Many of our AmeriCorps programs are nestled inside other organizations that have other ways that they do background checks, they do other ways that they do programming. One of the things we always tell people is that you need to be well-versed and well aware of what the AmeriCorps experiences are. What you'll never see me is serve in the capacity of the CFO because I'm not trained, I'm not developed. That hasn't been my formal, what I've been asked to do. I don't know all the rules and regulations of the United States or the state of New York as it pertains to human resources. So we let the human resource folk be the human resource folk. We let the fiscal folk be the fiscal folk. We definitely work collaboratively together. I'm a program person. I'm pretty versed on program. I stay in tune with what programming is within AmeriCorps and what needs to happen. And we all come together regularly to build the best experience for all of our AmeriCorps members. So when we have fiscal people doing fiscal, HR experts doing HR, we have program people doing program, you let the experts be the experts, and so that there's no crossover, it minimizes a world of different mistakes. One of the other best practices I wanted to speak about was build relationships with other AmeriCorps programs outside of your own program. Listen, the commission folk, they're awesome. They pick up the phone very rarely, No, I'm joking. They always pick up the phone. They always answer your question. But here is the reality. They don't know all the answers to some of the questions and concerns because they're not in the field with you. So it's extremely important that you build a relationship with other AmeriCorps programs. I routinely speak to my people up in Rochester. I call Walita regularly. I speak to folk in Poughkeepsie. I speak to folk all across the state who are dealing with members because a lot of the concerns and challenges you have, they have. And who better to be able to answer those questions than people who are dealing with the same scenarios that you're dealing with. So it's extremely valuable, I believe, that you build a relationship with others who are doing similar work to what the work that you're doing, because it will definitely make the experience a much better experience. And yeah, I'll stop there. I have some other stuff to say, but I'll stop there.
Well, no, it's a great point. I mean, running an AmeriCorps program can be difficult and challenging, but you're not alone. It's really important to remember that, yeah, the commission is here and we can provide technical support, but there is an entire portfolio of programs in the state that you can also tap into for information. I'm going to come back to Julie next. Could you maybe talk about like how obtaining your credential affected your ability to support peers and to do your job and how it impacted that ability?
Sure. So I come from a little bit of a unique perspective because when I first started as a YPA, the credential didn't exist yet. Because I started in mid 2016, and then the credential wasn't launched until the beginning of 2019. So doing the work was already relatively the same, but once the credential actually launched itself, it kind of really standardized a lot of what we do across the state because um, if everybody felt pretty alienated from one another when it came to what other youth peer advocates did, depending on where they worked, depending on the population they served and in what capacity, how many people were working within the organization. Because I would say for our organization and Mental Health Advocates of Western New York, we probably hold the largest team of YPAs in the state. We have 10 youth peer advocates. Most organizations will have one or two. Um, sorry. So we have a very unique perspective when it comes to the broad variety in which that we have when it comes to the grants we've been able to receive, to the contracts that we have with different organizations. So we're able to be in hospitals and schools and the community and in the house. And we have a warm line and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of things that we've built up over the years that before we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants. So having the credential definitely narrowed down our scope to really figure out, okay, this is exactly what everybody does at the core value of it all. And here's how we can add our spins to it and things like that. And then also just the ability to be Medicaid billable and then be recognized as a Medicaid billable service is really big because a lot of organizations or schools initially didn't understand exactly what the YPA role was. They thought that maybe we were interns. They thought that maybe we were mental health therapists or something that really wasn't the scope. So being able to give information about the credential too to them gave them a better idea of how we could help support the youth that they already had. So I think it made a really big difference there.
Jason, you mentioned the credit for prior learning, and I know that SUNY is also a school of national service. I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit.
Sure. So you have to think of this as sort of two silos, if you will. There's credit for prior learning where this YPA credential will fit because it's already been evaluated. And I think you hit the nail on the head, a standardization, right? Everybody who goes through this credential is getting the same mastery of skill. Whereas the other silo is it more of a what we call an individualized prior learning assessment. Word salad, right? IPLA. And IPLA is a process that students go to through with their mentor, where through essay-based writing, you can achieve that level of mastery in whatever it is you're trying to get credit for, right? And so that's two things. So on a national scale, and I think this is where our partnership with New York State AmeriCorps comes in, is that they're getting that a nationally recognized credit, right, through a SUNY granting institution. So the idea is that now when maybe AmeriCorps members in Texas or wherever may have you can say, okay, wow, look at what they're doing in New York. Is this option open to me? And the answer is yeah, sure. So I think that is that kind of where you're.
Yeah, and there's also there's a network of universities that have been recognized as schools of national service that will offer certain benefits and incentives to AmeriCorps alums.
Yeah, and this is kind of what's unique about Empire is the wraparound service. So we have a unique partnership in that we recognize that national service, and we lowered the fee for that prior learning and IPLA. So AmeriCorps members didn't use up all of that $7,000 benefit. And it's a blanket fee of $750, and that goes for hiring experts in that field to do that evaluation of the IPLA. But for the AmeriCorps members, we lowered it down to $300. So it provides more access. Now, all students at SUNY Empire get what we call wraparound services, where You're assigned a student success coach to help you navigate an online learning environment. You have your faculty mentor, which sort of guides you through the learning process. We have an office of basic needs. So if you're somebody who is displaced or homeless, they'll work with maybe county officials or local officials to help get you set up. Things as simple as a laptop loaner program. We have a huge opportunity programs, we call it. So if you're somebody who may be eligible for additional services, you probably know it as EOP or SEOP. But what's unique about Empire is that's all money-based, right? That's family-based or income-based right off your taxes. At Empire, we have this other program called the Empire Promise, where that's not a financial-based requirement. So if you're somebody who, just misses that margin by like $1, right? Oh, gee, sorry, I can't afford to go. No, we understand that. We work with you, and these services still affect you. You're just not getting that federal or state assistance, but you're still getting the supports that you would as if you would. So all students are offered those types of programs.
And I think SUNY's also waived the application fee, right?
Yep,
for
we
any
don't have an
AmeriCorps loan?
and invariably we also waive the essay. So there's no entrance. Used to have to write an essay to get in, used to have to pay a $50 orientation fee or an application fee. We don't do that anymore. The idea is to provide access to all, I mean, think about it, SUNY, State University of New York, right? And so the idea is that all New Yorkers should have the ability to learn at a higher level. And so by removing those barriers, that's the mission.
Thank you. Roxanne, maybe could you talk about how partnerships with local organizations play a role in the success of your AmeriCorps program? Or maybe Eric too could chime in on that one.
Yeah, partnerships are really the foundation of our program. We have to know our community, know the people in our community, know the services that the people in the community need and are using, and be part of what they're thinking the solution is. What we do is attend meetings that our community has. We participate in surveys that they're doing in the community to find out what the real needs are. Sometimes we think we know what the needs are, or everybody's saying, oh, the community needs this or they need that, but that's not what the community is saying that they need, or that's not what has come out. We partner with other CBOs. We also partner with the school district. The school district has become a very important partner with the after-school programs. And with our new administration at the school, they're recognizing the youth need mental health services. So they have done a lot of looking into it and talking about what they need, and have turned to us to be in the programs and be there to help with the mental health issues that are going on. If it's just supporting the kids in school as mentors, having somebody there to walk around in the school with them so that they're not getting suspended or sent home, let them de-escalate. The school district just started a sensory room. It's going to be open next week, and we're in talks with them about having an AmeriCorps member join the staff that's in the room, so that there's 2 people in the room. It'll be a therapist or a teacher, but to have another hands-on, especially for the youth, to see somebody there. We do have YPAs. We have, before they were called YPAs, they're all moved on. Most of them have aged out. At the time, the age range wasn't 30, so they had moved on, and a lot of them are in our local organizations that we're partnering with. So it's really nice that we have members that were AmeriCorps members and YPAs, and now they're the actual workers in the agency. So they know what AmeriCorps is. They know what AmeriCorps is about. And that's really, really important for the host sites, for them to have the same visions and the same things that we know what AmeriCorps is and we know what our goals are, but we have to make sure that we've articulated that to our host sites.
Thank you. Eric, how do you recruit AmeriCorps members? Where do you find them? Does the commission just give you people to serve, or? I know the answer to that one, but we'll let you answer.
Yeah, that's crazy. How do I recruit? We have a multifaceted, multi-layered recruitment strategy. First, we believe everybody in our community is a part of our recruitment strategy. Being in the Hudson area for the past 12 years, we're sort of locked into the system now, locked into the whole community. We have been there so that that parent who was once 32 years old when they started with us, they now have children and their kid was 6. So now their kids, they're recruiting and they're telling their kids now once they come into age, let me tell you about this program I worked with called AmeriCorps. So we naturally have children of parents that once served with us. We have, Roxanne talked about our partnerships. We have several different host sites. We actually hold host sites responsible to help us recruit. You know, you guys, they're going to be working with you. You guys know what it looks like in terms of the day-to-day and the work. Be a part of that recruitment strategy. We see that to be very, very, very important for us. And then we also believe in recruiting heavily from within our respective communities. I believe in changing the narrative. You know, I want to work with people who other people turn their backs on. Today's reality does not have to be tomorrow's reality if you don't want it to be. That's something I believe in my heart. And so a young person who was 15 years old just trying to figure out life, or 12, 13, 14 years old just trying to figure out life, may have gotten into a little bit of trouble, nothing crazy, but just a little bit of trouble. I want to recruit that person. I want to work with that person. I want to give them an opportunity. They've gotten older. They've learned a little bit. They've matured a little bit. I think with our program, with the supports we create, the systems we have established with strong leadership, that those folks can help contribute. Everybody can serve. Everybody can grow. So we have a multi-layered, everybody's a part of our recruitment strategy. And we recruit, you know, we go to the county fairs, we work with organizations who are specifically looking for AmeriCorps workers and AmeriCorps volunteers, forgive me. And so we recruit all year, all the time. The applications never stop. And I got to read them all. Too much work.
Also, for the retention piece of that, we make sure we support. And if we see somebody might not be showing up, or the host site mentions that they notice something's going on, and many of our young people do have mental health challenges, or it doesn't even have to be mental health. Sometimes this year already, since September, we've had 4 members become homeless. So we do what we can to help guide them to the right place so that they can move on, and then they have that skill to help the next person. And it could be a youth, it could be an adult that can say to another family when they run into them at the after-school program, hey, I get it, you know, I know that. But they've gotten the support from us, and Eric does a lot of support with his members, meets with them regularly, probably more than anybody. Yeah, probably more than they would like, but you know, we kind of keep our finger on the pulse, because our community is a very needy community, and we do have people that could be without food for days before they're going to say anything. And if they feel like we're a support to them, they stay with us and they tell other people, and then that turns into the recruitment. They're like, hey, you know, you have the support. You know, they're not going to fire you because your son got sent home because he stabbed somebody with a pencil, and those kind of things happen, and they lose their job at the hospital, they lose their job at Walmart for those kind of things. And we work with them, and we make sure they're getting the services they need so that they can continue to grow.
One last thing, I do apologize. Well, maybe not my last thing, but I want to say this. I know Roxanne talked about partnerships and the different organizations and host folks we work with. There's no relationship more important for us than our relationship with our Department of Social Service. Extremely, extremely critical. As you well know, AmeriCorps, they receive a living allowance, and a lot of our members get supports from DSS. And I know because we were talking about that a little bit at lunch. And a lot of DSS organizations do not understand what that living allowance is, what protections you get within AmeriCorps. And so there were, for years, there were members who would work with us and then they would lose their housing support. They would lose their food, whatever financial supports they were getting with food. And with AmeriCorps, they're protected with that. And so, and that's part of what's critical. So we spent a lot of time educating the DSS team, up to and including the commissioner of the DSS, about what this AmeriCorps thing is. And so, and how AmeriCorps volunteers are supported and protected and allowed to serve, because, we've lost a lot of members before that became a reality. Members were put in an impossible position. I would love to come work with you, but I'm getting $800 a month for housing, and DSS said, and you're paying me $1,000, and so DSS saying if I come work with you, I'm going to lose the $800, and now I have to start paying for it myself. And so members were like, I would be working with you for $200. It never added up. And so, and we had to kind of really build a relationship, an education campaign with DSS, the whole team at the DSS up in the Hudson Valley, and just helping them to understand what this AmeriCorps thing is. So there's no relationship that was more critical. That really affected our program some 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. It was crushing us because we were losing great members. They would work with us for 30 days until that first month, and they had their before those numbers came in, and then they were dropping like flies, and we had to try to solve and figure out what that was all about. So that relationship is something that was extremely critical for us, Michael.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Eric. Partnerships are key. I'll give you an example. The panel this morning talked about kind of like it was only natural or organic that Pinterest and Schultz rolled out their idea through AmeriCorps, and AmeriCorps was like, oh, we've done this, we can do this. So I'll share a very similar story with me in partnerships. Is that before I met with Linda and Beth and the folks at OCFS and AmeriCorps, I had just finished working on a partnership with New York State OPWDD and their credentials with direct support professionals, right? Very, very, very similar to what this YPA is. We've evaluated it. We attach certain college learning credits for it. Folks who work or who are direct support professionals usually provide some sort of health care or care to someone, right? It could be a child, could be an elderly parent, what have you. And they'll do it through where I live. AIM Services is a big employer of these DSPs. So the idea is through workforce development and WIOA to, which is funding, to elevate these folks to a higher salary. And so where does Empire fit? And that's the partnership piece. We hold the info sessions. We don't educate, we're the experts in teaching about what it is we're teaching about. You're the experts, the boots on the ground, doing what you do. In this case, volunteering as a youth peer advocate. In their case, providing direct services to folks who need them. We can stack it into a degree in health and community services for the DSPs, but the YPAs, maybe they want to field in some sort of a public health or public awareness or policy, maybe even business, who knows, whatever you want to know about. And so the idea of keeping and maintaining that partnership where marketing dollars can be sent for this message. We're online, so think about how we market, right? Geofencing, all of those things to get your awareness of your programs out there. That starts with conversations like this at that partnership level. So partnerships are absolutely key, I think, to any successful initiative.
Great. Yeah, great points. I think I got time for one more question, and then we'll open it up to the audience to ask questions, and that's going to lead right into our open Q&A. So for Julie, last question. What are some of the most common misconceptions that people have about youth mental health? Like, what should we, as state government, trying to develop a program, avoid, if there's anything you can think of?
That's a good question. So
Thank you.
I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier about how sometimes we get mistaken for being interns or being seen as therapists and stuff like that. But I feel like when it comes to misconceptions, I think we struggle with ageism a lot, where people don't take us as seriously because we're very young. And that's the whole point of being a youth peer advocate, is we're supposed to be young in age and stuff like that. So I think that's something that, by and large, everybody on our team has experienced in some capacity. And that makes it very difficult. I think some of the organizations that we work in, because say, some YPAs may be employed, say, by a school or by a hospital, whereas we're employed through a nonprofit organization where we have to make these connections with the other organizations that actually have all of the youth. Um, so sometimes when they don't understand exactly what we do and then they don't want to necessarily learn about it, it creates challenges as well, because then it becomes a lot of red tape. It becomes very political in a sense, where we have to go by their standards and what they say. And if it doesn't necessarily line up as nicely as we'd like it to be when it comes to the advocate part of it, and being able to actually speak up for youth or like help them and stuff like that, that can also create a lot of challenges as well. Um, and I'd also say, because I know earlier it was mentioned about like the public health AmeriCorps and about like just being in the helping service field in general, there is a lot of burnout. There's a lot of like, the secondary traumatic stress, the vicarious trauma, a lot of things that can cause a lot of people to leave, to get to quit, to give up, to develop a very like bleh attitude when they're working, and then it kind of shows in how they work. But in the peer field, it's doubled because we still have our own mental health issues on top of it. And so I've seen so many faces kind of come and go throughout the organization just because I've been working there for so long. And it's very difficult because you have to find the balance, obviously, between being able to help someone else, but also being able to help yourself. So I think something that other organizations, if they're interested in hiring youth peer advocates or government supporting it and stuff like that, is really being able to promote self-care, to promote supervision, consistent supervision at that too, and just creating a real connected network among all of the AmeriCorps members. Because even like I said earlier, when you're so isolated just by working by yourself or with one other person and you don't know how everyone else is doing, it can be it can make it much harder for you to feel like you're a part of this bigger picture. So really being able to understand how other people are going through it, what they do to help themselves and things like that, can make a really, really big difference. Um, but one of the biggest things I would say that can kind of help with like the resilience and stuff like that is just the reward of being able to actually work with the youth. Because one of the things that drives me and has kept me going for years is the number of youth who have told me, I want to be a youth peer advocate when I turn 18. I want to do this for a living. I know that like what you've done helped me and I want to help others. And we've hired 5 or 6 youth peer advocates who we originally provided services to when they were youth. And to have that shift and that dynamic and being able to have kind of like a dual relationship where you got to see them growing up and see them overcome their struggles to get to the place that they are now, it is so inspiring and it just brings me so much joy. And I think that is something that should be shared with everybody so that everyone can be aware that like this is an amazing thing to be able to use your story and use your experience to inspire others, as well as kind of help yourself at the same time.
Great, thank you very much. So I'll open it up if the audience has any questions. If you want to go to the mics, or we can just do what we did earlier. Just want to yell out. You can ask questions of the panel, but we also have everyone who spoke earlier still in the room. If you have other questions, really any questions related to this initiative, we'll just do that for the next period of time and then wrap up. So if you want to just maybe get to the mic, because I think This is being recorded too, so it'd be great if you're on the mic.
Hi, you can hear me. Hi. Thank you so much, first off. I have a question for Julie. Just out of curiosity, I'm a trained social worker, so I have that in my mind. And I'm wondering, in your role, how much do you self-disclose? How much do you talk about your lived experience as a way of connecting or doing your work? And are there times that you don't? Just thinking about that.
I'd say maybe when I first started, I was a little bit more iffy about how I shared my story, just because part of it was maybe I hadn't processed it fully and stuff like that. So now I can probably share almost anything and it doesn't really affect me. I've kind of like separated myself from myself. Maybe it's not a good idea to do that. I don't know. It's compartmentalizing in some aspect, but um, as long as it's done in a way that serves a purpose where you're not just sharing to share, obviously. So if it actually relates to the youth. So usually how I do it is if say I'm working one-on-one with somebody and I'm going to be with them for an extended period of time to help establish the rapport, I'll give like a broader explanation of my story and I'll kind of go through everything. And then as time goes on, if there's something in particular they're going through, then I can share more in depth, like a certain pocket of how it relates to that sort of experience. So it definitely depends. And it also depends on your own like personal stuff as well. So we have something that we call like green light, yellow light, red light statement, where green lights are things that you could tell to any stranger where you're like, oh, I have glasses on my face, or my name is Julie. And then there might be more yellow light statements where it's like, okay, my name is Julie and I've received mental health services, and you just kind of leave it at that. Red light statements obviously get more into the nitty gritty of it. Maybe not necessarily to a point where it's triggering per se or anything like that. But you can obviously get into more detail and stuff like that. So it really does depend on your rapport with the person. And it depends on your own comfortability because anything could change within a given day. So if something happens where you're like, I'm just really not feeling like sharing about this aspect of myself, you do not have to. That is something that's really powerful about being a peer is you can choose how much and how or when to share as well, depending on how you're feeling, what's going on. So it's very much flexible. So I'll kind of say that.
Any other questions? Again, either for the panel or just anything related to the initiative, anything anyone is wondering about? Absolutely. It'd be helpful, yeah, please, sorry. Is that why no one's asking questions?
Thank
'Cause
you.
No one's
They don't want to get up.
Julie, I'm coming for you again. Just out of curiosity, did you receive any, like, what kind of training? Did you receive any training? How, maybe that's even also for the initiative and for everybody, what kind of training and supervision really goes into for youth peer advocates?
Yeah, so the credentialing modules will kind of break down a little bit more into like, say, the history of peer advocacy. It breaks down into kind of a little bit about strategic sharing and how do you share your story effectively. Um, but we also do our own trainings as well. Like we got trained in adult and youth mental health first aid. Um, we've gotten trainings on how to facilitate support groups. We've gotten trainings on um what's the QPR, question, persuade, refer. It's like suicide prevention. So we've kind of gotten a lot of differing, and it kind of relates to the continuing education that you have to do with your credential anyway, which is really helpful. But there's probably always more that we could learn about. Especially, I think a big thing is just with the integration and working with people who are across more than just one service. Because for me personally, I've only really been, for the most part, within the mental health pocket for my own services. Like I got a little bit of special education because I needed to get like accommodations when I wasn't going to school. But substance use is not a part of my story. The OPWDD is not really a part of my story. So for people who have experience in more than one setting, probably know how difficult it is when the systems don't work well together with one another. So like I think that is probably something that could be very beneficial is like how do you work with someone who struggles with more than one different facet of the lived experience piece. Um, and I'm trying to think if there's any other big trainings that we get. We get a lot though.
Anyone else?
I guess I have a question too.
Go ahead, Jason.
It came up a couple times about YPAs in the school, and I'm wondering if anybody out there has had experience where how were they received by, faculty or school administration? Sometimes there's, well, if you're not a teacher, you shouldn't be in my classroom type mentality. I'm wondering if anybody has shared, had any of those experiences or anything like that. Doesn't have to be a school, maybe even a place of employment where,
I would love to talk about that. It's a game breaker. I mean, it's a game changer. Forgive me. Whoa, whoa. Let me say that differently. You're absolutely right. I've run into those school systems where we've attempted to place members inside classrooms inside the school. I would forever have those conversations, debates about, and they feel less than from the members, the schools, members feeling less than, teachers and school administrators making them feel less than because they didn't have a credential or this credential, the same discipline or whatever. And so when we started putting YPAs and giving them that credential, it was just, whoa, okay, we need to kind of look at this a little bit differently. These folks actually have a real concentrated discipline and training and credential in working with people of this specific age group. And so it was an absolute game changer for us. And it took a lot of stress and of that battle I consistently fought saying, no, these guys are really good. These guys, because we take our recruitment and interview process very seriously. And it was an absolute game changer for us having this credential and this, skill set with them. Absolutely.
And the semantics that we were running into placing people in the classrooms, placing them in the school district with the board, and people came and said, if you need somebody else in the classroom, they're the same thing as an aide, so you have to hire them, you're not allowed to have them. The teachers union were up in arms, but now we were able to say they're a youth peer advocate and they're not replacing an aide. They do a whole different job in there. So that's how we got around placing some in the classrooms with the unions.
I think that touches on a pretty important point too. It's a rule of AmeriCorps that AmeriCorps members can't displace employees. So it's meant to be value added to your organization. So it's not meant to be a method to bring in cheap labor. It's meant to be, a way to have a service project, people that come in and do service and add value to your organization. That's an important point.
There's going to be some hesitancy in any organization to having AmeriCorps members because they don't, could be advisory responsibilities. It could be that they just don't understand what the role is of an AmeriCorps member. And, we've heard, throughout the years of there being pushback in school settings, in healthcare settings. And so it's, really important to have like a champion who understands, who knows somebody who's an AmeriCorps member or who was an AmeriCorps member, and to kind of like smooth the setup of the program. And then typically like once the program's there for a short amount of time, everybody wants an AmeriCorps member, and they want to supervise them and they want the assistance. But sometimes there's a little bit of growing pains, I think.
And it's really important that the AmeriCorps member themselves know what their role is, but we call it the elevator speech, that if somebody asks, well, what does AmeriCorps do? What does your program do? What do you do? That they're able to articulate that, because if they're in a classroom and they're a YPA and they're like, well, I don't know, then it's, a whole different level of that. So Eric, during trainings, they practice that. They practice, what is AmeriCorps? If you're walking down the street in your shirt, or you're in the school in your shirt, or you're at, somewhere, the library, and somebody asks, oh, what's AmeriCorps? Where is that? What do you do? They're able to articulate that, and that's really important for new members.
Right.
Hi.
I have a comment and then a question. The comment is, for those of you who are brand new to AmeriCorps and thinking about applying for this initiative and don't quite know where to begin, I think on the stage is basically an array of the elements of a successful AmeriCorps program. And there are more, but these are essentials. First, you need the person who has the spark to serve others, and that's Julie. And then you need an organization that is willing to take on what can be burdensome. And I think Roxanne and Eric and anyone else in this room who has run an AmeriCorps program understands that there's a lot of paperwork. There's, you have to get the grant. If you listen to Megan's presentation, I don't want you to be intimidated, but it is not easy. And then you need people like SUNY Empire who are willing to listen and take a chance and say, yes, you fit within our service clientele, the demographic that we're trying to reach, our mission. And so we will give these breaks to the people who are in your program. And then, of course, you need the commission, which is Michael. And so when I said earlier, if you have not done this before, one of your best resources is going to be the people in your community who have. And we don't have programs in every single community, but there is usually someone to whom you can reach out who will be, if not partnering with you, happy to help you. And so I recommend that. So Julie, when you wrote us and volunteered to come to speak, I kept saying, but she's an AmeriCorps member who's a YPA. She's a unicorn. We have to get her here. And so I want to thank you very much for making the trip, which I know is not easy. And I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about your actual AmeriCorps service with the NCCC and what you think it might bring to your current role as a YPA.
Yes. So, for those who do not know what the NCCC branch is, the National Civilian Community Corps. So it's a team based and it's with young adults. So you're serving alongside 18 to 24-year-olds. Everybody is 18 to 24-year-olds, except for the team leaders. They can be any age, but for the most part, young adults as well. We were assigned to the North Central region. So we had about 10 states that we could be brought to an organization, and we would work with them for about 2 months, and then we would come back to our home base, which was in Iowa, and then we would kind of debrief, get briefed on the next organization, and then we'd go there for another couple of months, and then we'd come back and we kind of do it all over again. For the most part, it was supposed to be 4 service projects long term, one for like essentially each quarter of the service term. But we ended up we had a special project that was 2 weeks long, and then we had a shortened service with another organization. And then by the end of the year, almost everybody got pulled for disaster relief because in 2017, we had both Hurricane Harvey and then Hurricane Irma that hit kind of back to back. So everybody either went to Texas or went to Florida to kind of help with like disaster relief funds and stuff like that. So essentially I got to work with 6 different organizations and services long term. But there was so much variety that I got to really work with a lot of different groups of populations and stuff like that. So we were with young kids for one, we were with adults with moderate to severe disabilities in another. We went to Flint, Michigan, where we were with their blight elimination project. They were probably my favorite just because a lot of Flint reminded me of Buffalo at home, and like the community and the resiliency and stuff. So like I adored going there. But there was so much that like was a mix between doing hands-on work, say where you're actually like, drilling things and sawing things and like lifting really heavy stuff. And then there was other times where you're really using your mental capacity and stuff to educate people or to help support them, and stuff like that. So it just really broadened my perspective to a lot of different people. and a lot of different skills that I never would have gotten otherwise. And not only just from where we were working, but with my team members as well, because we all came from across the country. We all had our own experiences, our own cultures, our own backgrounds. So it was amazing. It was one of the best things I ever did. Um, and I just really, really enjoyed the experience. And I was glad I was able to do it. And it was funny though, just because it was 2017, so it was a certain somebody's also first year of service, and at one point he had proposed a budget to cut AmeriCorps. And so the government had shut down. We were like, are we still working? I don't know what's happening. They were like, just keep doing what you're doing, and if anybody asks, don't say anything. So we were just, we just kind of kept going along with it. But overall, across the board, like, it was just an amazing experience. And it just, even though I came back to what I was doing before I did AmeriCorps, it really did change my outlook on how I see people or how I see certain experiences. So I'm forever grateful that I was able to do it.
I think there's a couple people waiting for microphone. Go ahead.
Hi, as a clinician for the Boys and Girls Club of Mount Vernon, first of all, I admire the advocacy, the empowerment, the passion behind the work that collectively you all have done, and I would imagine people in this room as well. But it's a general question just for the whole panel. What's the most rewarding aspect of what you do, the most challenging, and where would you like to see things go for AmeriCorps in 2025 and beyond?
You want me to start? Well, part of it, like I shared, was already with like the burnout, the high turnover rate with the YPAs and stuff like that. I think another thing that's more personal, just our organization in general, we struggle a lot with diversity. I'm not gonna lie, there's 10 of us, we are all white. It is not the easiest, especially because Buffalo and Western New York is a, majority minority community. And we've had YPAs in the past and stuff who were not white. And I think part of it was that they got burnt out faster because there was a lot of like tokenism where it's like, well, because you're the black person, you're going to go into the inner city schools every single time and you're going to speak on this and you're representing everybody type of thing. So it wasn't fair to them by any means, but we do definitely struggle with being able to mirror the youth that we're actually serving in a similar way, because we want to be able to reach across to everybody and have them find someone that they resonate with on all aspects. And we're just not at that place right now, unfortunately. Hopefully we'll kind of get to doing that in the future. But I think part of it is also the cultural aspect in general, just about like, a lot of times people who aren't in, are in the minority communities, they talk about mental health very differently. It becomes a conversation about religion, or it becomes a thing about, we don't talk about it in general, so you're just going to deal with it and you're not going to get services at all. So then they don't want to then work as a YPA afterwards. Um, so there's a couple problems to that in general. It's not just, oh, there's one solution. But I think that's a challenge in personal that I would love to see addressed in some type of way, but I don't know how to do that.
So I'll give you my green light version of my story here. The last time I was in this part of Manhattan was 24 years ago on September 11th, 2001. I started my volunteer service when I was 19 years old in high school. I joined my local fire department, and then I saw a need and joined my local emergency squad as a volunteer. And being in New York State, we at the time had a statewide mutual aid plan. And I was 19 years old at ground zero, 10 hours after the second tower fell. And I was there for 48 hours. I then was a 20-year veteran 911 operator for Washington County, where we fielded anywhere from 60 to 75,000 calls for service a year, 85 fire departments, 12 ambulances, 13 fire departments in Vermont because we're right on the border. But I got burned out, and I think that attrition is our biggest enemy in anything we do in volunteer and giving in our communities. And that's why I'm so happy to partner with AmeriCorps and be able to show the mobility one can do with their career, with their life, if they're going through service. I still am active in my community. I'm a volunteer. I belong to the Fraternal Order of Elks, and I've held several leadership roles through that. We have a very active youth I want to say program through the Elks. We partner with our schools. We have 5 school districts that we work and to represent. Things like backpack program, Operation Christmas. We provide food baskets for needy families who maybe can't get access to social services and things like this. So I think that that spark, that drive that was talked about, it's almost like it's inert. And it's up to you to figure out how you want to give it. And this is just one way, right? AmeriCorps in this initiative is just one way. But so I love my job. I love fostering partnerships and talking about partnerships and how education really is that forward momentum to do the good work that we do.
I think one of the things that's very important with us in a community is the AmeriCorps members take pride in what they're doing. And when they do that, it shows. And we have people asking, how can I be an AmeriCorps member? What can I do? They're feeling recognized, they're feeling heard, and then they find out that there's other opportunities. And the Education Award is a big deal in our community. So many people, they haven't had any exposure to any type of higher education. And the first opportunity is often with the AmeriCorps program. And what happens is our school district likes to, at our after-school program and our other high school programs, they take families and they take kids on trips to colleges. And very often our AmeriCorps members themselves have never been on a college campus. And them just serving in the classroom or in the program that's going to visit these schools, they have a different outlook on things that they never had that perspective before. I'll let Eric talk in a second. The other elephant in the room that I'd like to see changed with AmeriCorps is the match. I know that it's going down, but there's often RFPs that come out for different kind of funding sources, after school programs and things like that, that are in very poor communities, free lunch communities. And, you know, we do the best we can to get matches, but we're constantly asking for match waivers. So if there was a mechanism at the beginning to know that it didn't seem so, 50%, and it didn't seem so much. And we've talked about, well, do we have less members? Do we want to do less? Our community members that we have at host sites were like up in arms, like, oh my gosh, no, we'll see what we can do. And at lunch, we sat with some people that were having, some of the organizations would write small mini grants or go try to get money to help with the matches. And we do that and we do the best we can, but every time I'm spending my time looking for match and I start asking him to call meetings with the host sites, we're losing perspective on some of the stuff that may be able to be done in the community.
And I'll go very briefly. Something, what you said, the proud, something we're happy about. I think that was one of the questions, right? In the past year, I'm a change agent. I love the role. I accept the role. I strive to be as best at the role as I possibly can. I want to see the world change. I want to see everybody get an opportunity to serve. Everybody needs help. Everybody can be a leader. You know, for those who know my program, they know in this past year we had an opportunity to go, and I'm not afraid to go anywhere at any time to get me to that end place, to get us to that place as a society. You know, we had a chance to initiate a new program. It's called Journey to Inner Peace, where our AmeriCorps program, we collaborated with the Department of Juvenile Justice for Youth, and we sent AmeriCorps workers into 3 maximum secure youth detention centers to facilitate workshops and to work with that population and helping them, you know, by utilizing the utilizing strategies from the DBT formula, working with young people to help them realize that today's reality does not have to be tomorrow's reality if you don't want it to be, that they can change with support. And what we've seen come back, the early reviews, we've seen a lot of young people say, I don't want to choose, we talk about recidivism, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to be a contributing member of society. And that right there has been one of the most fulfilling in my 31 years of working with AmeriCorps. Wow, did I really say that out loud? In my 31 years of working with AmeriCorps, that's been one of the most fulfilling moments that I can really recall, that I can remember. And I'm hoping that going forward, we can continue to work with that project, expand it so that more young people, because it's crazy to me to imagine that at 17, a decision you made at 15 years old should affect you for the rest of your life. But that is the society we live in, that is the world we live in, and I'm actually working as best I can to help young people change the narrative, change the trajectory of their life. So that's something that is near and dear to my heart. Hope that answers your question.
We have another question? Yeah, so you're waiting.
I can just talk. Okay. Hi, my name is Rosdeli Cyprian. I'm currently an AmeriCorps member with New York City Civic Corps. This is my first time doing anything with AmeriCorps. And before I get in, before I get into my question, I just want to say thank you to everyone in this room. You guys are so committed to like doing good. And me being the young person that I am, it's inspiring to be around people that are older than I that are so committed to the change in the future. But my question is for Julie. I resonated very strongly with especially your higher education story and the transfer from community college to university. It's very hard. But other than that, my question is, what are some main challenges that you have with the youth that you talk to? Because it's harder for youth that are especially facing mental health struggles to open up. And I know that you're a youth peer advocate. So I want to know, like, is it usually easy for them to open up to you? Is it something that you have to coax out of them? That's my question, because I know that it's very hard for someone who's struggling to actually accept the help that they need. So, yeah, okay.
Absolutely. So, great question. So, when it comes to the youth that we work, it's always supposed to be voluntary at their pace. We meet them where they're at. So, if they do not want to talk, we never force them to. Um, we usually use our story first to show that we're putting our wall down, we're being vulnerable with them. So if they feel like they would like to be vulnerable back, they can. So it gives them an opening. Say maybe compared to other mental health professionals, they really can't say disclose usually that much unless they've established a rapport or something like that. Whereas that's kind of like our superpower being a youth peer advocate, is that since we are comfortable enough with sharing our stories, and we've experienced all the stigma and all the backlash, and well, mental illness doesn't exist. We've heard all those things before. So to be able to kind of just say, here's what it is, here's how I experience it. If you'd like to share, you're welcome to, but we don't have to. It really makes it a lot easier for them to feel comfortable with doing it. Because I remember I was working, it was my first time ever working with a youth. It was our first session. And I'm like, usually I talk the entire time. If you want to talk, you're welcome to. You don't have to. I share my story. And then she just shares everything. And then she goes at the end, it took me over a year to share all that with my therapist, and I did it with you in 30 minutes. And so, like, the peer role and the peer perspective does work. It is so powerful, so much more than we think it does. That really, a lot of times, the youth, they already want to talk about it. They just need that slight little nudge to feel like this is a safe space. It's okay for me to share. And then they do. And it's amazing.
Yep. One more question?
Great. Thanks for sharing all this information. As I'm listening to the panel, I recall like a conversation that I had with someone who runs it's called Jobs Plus. It's a workforce development program in New York City, and they work specifically with public housing residents. And in our conversation, they shared that it was through their screening process that they discovered that some of the residents had these mental health needs, and they shared a specific story about some residents, just like self-care, like taking a bath, like basic things that we think are basic that folks are just walking around not doing. And if it wasn't for that screening, they wouldn't even be connected to like some clinical resources. So I'm trying to figure out like what the connection is between this wonderful program that could maybe provide more additional wraparound support or at least complement. And if there's any like conversations, you talked about the schools, but say like public housing, like where are the opportunities to kind of connect that initiative with the New York Mental Health Corps?
Well, I think two things I can speak of, and I think it goes back to that partnership and that idea of not just educate in the terms of academic or academia, but really raise awareness in how this program speaks to everything you just said, right? But how do we do that? It's not just blistering, social media. It's actually showing and sharing these stories and sharing the partnerships and Pinterest, right? Great platform for everything you just said. Look at here's one example of where this was successful. It's getting that out. And I think that that this initiative has assembled such a good team that ask that question in a year and I'll probably give you a different answer because we'll be there, right? We'll be there. So
Where are my YDAPS people who I sat at lunch with? Can you talk about the supportive housing?
So, Linda, ask your question. I don't know what you want us to talk about.
I'm sorry, what?
Ask your question. What do you want us to talk about?
You had mentioned that the youth that you serve, and I should give some background. You are from the division of OCFS, which is the commission's host agency. It's YDAPS, it's Youth Development and Partnerships for Success. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes.
And we were talking about supportive housing that is available for some youth for 2 years. Is that right?
Right. So the conversation I had with Linda was the fact that my agency, my division actually, we serve homeless runaway youth, right? And for YPA, for such a transitionary group, how do we capture them? How do we make sure those programs that serve runaway homeless youth get access to apply for YPA grant, right? And then I share with Linda the fact that some of our programs, we have supportive housing, whereby the youth who are actually runaway homeless youth can actually be in those programs for 2 years. So the supportive houses option of runaway homeless youth, a youth can actually stay in those housing for 2 years while they are actually, exploring educational opportunities, vocational training opportunities. So I thought that would be an opportunity for those programs that actually have supportive housing to be roped in to have the YPA option accessible to them.
And also, if those young people are interested in working towards a YPA,
Right.
they have a place to live. I don't know who asked the question because my back was to the group. Is that something that bridges that for you?
And just can I just add quick, our programs are actually voluntary, right? So the youth can come in and leave at their will. They're not placed, right? So our youth are not placed.
I just want to also say like the New York City Office of Mental Hygiene has a Public Health AmeriCorps program that's in the NYCHA housing that, you know, could be, so they have AmeriCorps members that are in the NYCHA housing and can work with youth within the housing as well. You know, they currently have a program. There's nothing to stop them from applying for the Youth Mental Health Corps when the funding is available to really kind of solidify that part of a program.
Yeah, I would just add that a lot of that comes to us rather than us necessarily going out to, say, a housing nonprofit. We kind of set the parameters, and then we hope that a housing nonprofit, for example, might think up a model that fits AmeriCorps, that then they can apply for funds, and then they could run a program that has housing support. So in some cases, we do reach out to organizations and partner, but in a lot of instances, we're relying on, you know, the fields to come to us with ideas and program designs and models.
Right,
think
we
that-
have to do like this open competitive process for grant applications. And so, you know, be sure to let your colleague know or your contact know that this is in the works and that you're going to be receiving the RFP because you attended today, you'll have it. And so, you know, it's really some of it we need to, we're hoping you all spread the word and we hope you apply directly, but we also hope that you tell everybody you know who's in the field who might be interested so that we can, you know, have a very vibrant program next year.
I'd also like to add just really, really quickly that at least for our organization, you know, our first ever youth peer advocate that worked at our organization was in 2013. So like, even when I was coming in, I'm one of the OGs. But like, it started off incredibly small. We were in one singular hospital twice a week for an hour group. That was it. And then it expanded to a community teen support group where people coming from the hospital, they already knew who the people were. Then they would show up, they'd bring other people with them. Then that expanded to another hospital. It expanded to a residential treatment facility. And then it slowly increased to get to the point where we're in the schools that we're in. Like we just got our 2024 data, the schools alone with the numbers, because they didn't tell us other numbers. The school stuff that we do, we served 19,000 youth last year across like presentations, groups, one-on-ones, drop-in centers, just in the Western New York area. So like, this is the culmination of essentially, I have to do math, 12 years of work getting to this point where we're able to really say like, hey, we're comfortable in this position, but even still we're not comfortable because a lot of our stuff is still grant funded. So when the grants end, we're scrambling again, looking for how can we continue this work and look in other aspects and stuff like that. So it is always slow to start, but the more people talk about it and spread the word, the bigger the fire gets in a good way, not like in LA, sorry.
Okay, well, I just want to say thank you to all of our panelists for all their insights and information. Thank you to all of you for your attention. And I'm going to invite Linda up for some closing remarks. So thank you, guys.
So this concludes our Youth Mental Health Corps Forum. And again, I want to thank all of you for your participation today. The panelists, those in the audience at lunch. I think we've had close to a 360-degree look at some of the challenges facing our young people and how this new AmeriCorps program can help to address just some of those challenges. At this time, I'd like to offer some thanks to the following. starting with our New York State agency partners who have met with us every month and have joined us on this journey. The Department of Labor, SUNY Empire State University, our host agency, the Office of Children and Family Services, the Office of Service and Civic Engagement, and Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado, the New York State Nonprofit Unit, and our primary partner and collaborator in this initiative, the New York State Office of Mental Health. You may clap. The Schultz Foundation, Pinterest, America Forward, and the Federal AmeriCorps Agency for inviting us to take a deep dive into this issue and allowing us the freedom to dream big. All of our panelists and presenters, the commission staff, many of whom you met today, but also others who are back in Albany, who are working tirelessly and with fervor and dedication to fulfill our mission. Chair Michael Cashman and the members of the New York State Commission on National and Community Service, one of whom is with us today, Suzanne Eisenberg, and thank you, Suzanne, for coming and contributing. And finally, we'd like to thank Governor Hochul, who has shined a light on the mental health challenges facing young people in New York, and who has challenged us to begin the work of addressing those. So what's next? Megan gave you a good presentation, and I can say if all goes as planned, the New York State Youth Mental Health Corps will make its debut in the fall of this year. So because of your attendance here today, you are all now on our distribution list for RFPs. And so watch your email. This spring, please watch for an RFP requesting application for grants to incorporate this initiative into your current programming in a variety of ways. If you know others who did not register to attend today, encourage them to visit our website to sign up for our mailing list, and that they will be notified when the RFP is published, and other important information like when the grant is due. Until then, please consider who among your partners and possible intermediaries would be interested in joining you in a collaborative youth mental health corps program in your community or region, because we are always strongest when we work together. And you never know where the next partner is. 2 years ago, I would never have dreamed of having the kind of partnership that we have now with SUNY Empire. And the same can happen in your communities. With that, I adjourn this Youth Mental Health Corps Forum and wish you great and good luck in all of your endeavors to serve the youth of New York State. Thank you.